Being a pioneer in the application of an unprecedented punishment is a kind of feat. It means that the sin committed was so great, so repulsive, that the punishment until then not used for being so severe deserved a debut. Katherine Knight felt the displeasure of being the first of such a case in Australia. She was the first woman to be sentenced to life in prison with no option of parole in the country. This woman, as you will see, entered the hall of proven morbid criminals. Her condemnation appears to be fair, but you get to make your own judgment at the end of this video. Her story involves murder, cannibalism, beheading, and much more. From now on, you will know all the intricacies of the barbarian crimes committed by Katherine Knight. That, of course, if you have a stomach to handle it. Take this as a warning that the content I'm going to bring is strong. I'm Stalin Edgar, and this is Fear the Weird. Do you believe there's more to life than what we're taught? Do you have burning questions about hidden and controversial topics? Subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification to unravel the mysteries of life and the universe. Katherine Mary Knight was born in Tenterfield, far east of Australia. Her childhood was somewhat unstable. She moved a few times because of her mother. She had a few stepfathers and discovered an affair between her mother and a family friend. She heard many reports of sexual abuse coming from her mother. The stepfather was quite aggressive, forcing the woman to have sex, and it seems that this was not the only case in the family. Knight herself claimed to have been molested by different relatives. She once shipped one of her uncles who left her abruptly, committing suicide in 1969. Katherine still claims to feel his ghostly presence today. Her adolescence was marked by her courage. She faced any bully who thought was stronger than others. She even took a gun to school in order to threaten her attackers. After that, she found a job at a local slaughterhouse. She joined as a cleaning assistant, then started cutting small pieces of meat, but soon was promoted to deboning work. According to those closest to her, she thought the job was wonderful. It was at this time that she developed a strange habit. She hung the knives over the bed. She claimed that it could be useful someday. Katherine lived her life quietly or not at all until she met David Stanford Kellett. She fell in love, dated and married him. Her husband, however, received a very strange message from his mother-in-law. She told him to stay calm, always calm, when dealing with his wife because otherwise he would suffer in Katherine's hands. And this was what happened. The advice seems to have been helpful. The woman had already assaulted him on their wedding night. She was not satisfied with how often they had sex. When David fell asleep, she tried to strangle him. And that was only the beginning. One day, after being a little late getting back home, he received a blow to the head with a frying pan. At the same time, all his clothes were already on fire. He had a mild head injury, but he did not press charges. Soon after, they had a daughter. Katherine was aggressive towards her firstborn as soon as she was born. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression and hospitalized, which does not seem to have worked. Upon leaving the hospital, she abandoned her daughter on a train line and threatened people with an axe in her hand. Soon after, she cut off a woman's face and took a person hostage. After that, she was arrested again, which did not change her behavior at all. Upon leaving the jail again, Katherine abandoned David, who for an unknown reason had decided to stay with her even after the attacks. Soon after, she returned to work as a meat slicer but suffered an accident and retired. As a result, she was even granted a house by the government. During that time, she met David Saunders, a man who worked in mining. They moved in together, and in the same way she showed her dark side. She killed his dog just to show what could happen if he had an affair. She violently threw him out of the house a few times, then asked him to return. In the most serious case between the two, she wounded his head with an iron and stabbed his stomach with 2 scissors. To make a grand finale in this relationship, she cut off all of his clothes. Saunders resigned from his job, disappeared and kept in refuge, only to return to rescue his daughter. Knight had opened an order of justice against him, claiming to have been raped by David. As a consequence, he made sure never to return again. John Killingworth was the next victim of Katherine's strange love. However, there is no records of violence between the two, at least none that had been taken to court. They stayed together for 3 years, had met at the slaughterhouse and had a child together. They only parted when her husband discovered that there was another John in her life. Katherine was having an affair with John Price, one of the main characters in this unusual story. They had an affair before they started a relationship. He was a divorced man who had 3 children. After a brief period into the relationship, they moved in together. John reportedly knew about Katherine's violent behavior, but still decided to move in with her. According to reports, he did not want to marry her so that he wouldn't have to disown some of his possessions previously acquired. This caused her to put together a basket with materials that he supposedly stole from work and sent it to his boss. John was fired and the couple broke up, at least temporarily. Sometime later, they got back together. According to neighbors and friends, the fights continued fiercely. One recurring fight was pushed to the limit, to the point where lives are lost. The final fight ended in the death of John, and I assure you that this is the most non-violent part to mention in the story. Knight, with a known background, decided to make this relationship a bloodshed and did so without blinking an eye. Price had left the house after a series of fights, including one in which he had been stabbed. However, he stated that he needed to return to the site because he needed to see his family. But he left a clear warning to co-workers. If he did not come back, Katherine would have killed him. This was more of a premonition than a warning itself. He went home, they had sex, and he slept. He was awakened a while later being stabbed. He tried to escape, ran through the house, almost made it out the front door, but Katherine caught up to him and brought him inside again. In the meantime, he was still stabbed. His body was the victim of 37 stab wounds. At the time, the mother took on unprecedented forms of cruelty. Do you remember that she worked in a slaughterhouse removing bones? So, she used all her experience on John. She chopped up her husband. First, she peeled him off, as if she was really dealing with some piece of meat. During that time, she had beheaded John. She took off his skinless head, and what comes next is much more disturbing. Be prepared to listen. After all these barbaric acts, she decided to put John's head in a pot of boiling water. For the cannibal accompaniment, she cut some vegetables too. While the head was cooking, Katherine cut pieces from his buttocks to make a roast in the stove oven. It is worth remembering that John's children were not there. She had left them with a relative. The bizarre banquet was only for her own pleasure. Once the pieces fully cooked, she decided to help herself. She put some dishes on the table in a kind of representation of the whole family. She even left messages full of malice to John's children. Despite not being confirmed, everything indicates that she had tasted the food that she had made. She, however, seems not to have been very satisfied, so much so that part of the buttocks were lying in the yard of the house next to the dogs. Knight, after all this, took a large amount of medicine but did not die. The next day, some noticed John had gone missing, so the authorities decided to visit their home. At first, they found John's skin hung on a hook near the front door. Soon after, they found his remains in Katherine's faint body. They took her to the nearest hospital and managed to get her health back. Upon waking up, she claimed to remember nothing of what had happened. At the trial, it was claimed that she had borderline personality disorder, a psychological illness that would make her completely unstable and impulsive. But psychiatrists testified to perfect mental conditions and said that one thing would not justify the other, in that the disorder had little to do with the brutalities committed. Her crime was considered so brutal, so far beyond limits, that her conviction was unprecedented in Australia: life imprisonment without possibility of parole. She never showed remorse. Katherine was arrested a long time ago and is well respected in jail. Ironically, she is affectionately called the Nana. She is a local advisor, a type of court judge, an image totally contrary to the one she portrayed outside jail. Now that you know the story, do you think her sentence was fair? Leave your comments below and subscribe for future videos. See you next time.